And we are using 0.7% Etania in there. So the mouthfeel, the texture looks like a 3% full-fat yogurt. So that is ideal, 1 part to 2 parts. Yeah. And this is a soft serve ice cream. Again, it only contains 3% fat, but we're adding in 1% Etania so that it feels like it's a more premium soft serve ice cream. Now, at this cold storage temperature, the additional benefit of Etania is we found that on top of being creamier, it helps with shape retention at a frozen temperature. So, meaning that you are able to maintain the shape if you use an ice pop or as a soft serve where you just squeeze it out of the freezer. It helps to maintain the shape as well. So additional benefit maybe for Southeast Asia when the weather is really warm and hot. So, but again, I'm not saying that it won't melt, but it will melt slower, depending on the use level. Now, to push the envelope a bit further, we could help to create a vegan cream cheese, meaning it has no cheese in there. So it's a combination of solutions that we utilize. Now, Etania being used is a fat replacement. Now, cream cheese, usually you're looking at fat level of 35%. You look at this recipe, we are going to bring it down to about 24% with coconut oil. And we have an additional 2 other products as well. This is an emulsifier based on our waxy potato. And this is Elian C300 to help with the texture and water binding. So you can see that a combination of our solutions, we are going to help customer to make a vegan cream cheese. So I've got this vegan cream cheese, no preservative, you have to put in the refrigerator. And it helps to offer another choice for consumer to choose from should they want to decide not to use dairy, but they want a spread. So this brings out the Etania additional benefit is when you use at a high level, it actually is a gel and it's spreadable, yeah, because it's unique structure. So you can see that other than creaminess, other than being clean label, structural wise, depending on the use level. So in a drinking yogurt, to a stir yogurt, to a cream cheese or spreadable. So it has a multifunctional textural property, depending on other ingredients as well as the process as well. Yeah. So brief summary, I will not repeat everything, but we do encourage you to visit our booth again. If you do are thinking about certain projects that you want to talk to us, and what are the, or which type of Etania will be good for you, and we are here to help you. Just a quick summary, the use level is at the bottom, all the way to a pretty high use level, and what application it is. So it applies across dairy segment as well as plant-based segments. All right, thank you very much. So once again, you can go out and turn left. J26 is right ahead of you.
Just close it. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekalian. Mungkin Mr. Daniel tidak bawa sampel, tapi di bus kita ada aplikasi dari produk ini berupa gelato, yogurt plant-based, macaron, yes, and other product like seperti snack, confectionery dan lain sebagainya. Tapi Etania ini ada diaplikasikan di gelato. Ya, silakan mengunjungi bus kami di A2J26. Terima kasih.
Gua. OTW. Udah ya. Ya atau suruh seseorang ke sini aja. Ya, ntar gua kontak.
tes. Tes. Test, test. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sumatra Room. My name is Josh. I'll be your MC in the today's seminar. And to start our program, may I invite Mr. Avinash Lal, MRCI Director of APMEA.
Thank you, Josh. Uh, Today we are going to talk about how we understand consumers through technology. So let's start off with a bit about consumers. So the consumers today that we deal with are dynamic. Their needs are constantly evolving. They always want more. They want local food. They want food and beverage which has transparency. They want clean labels. They want something which is sustainable. Uh, a lot of brands don't give enough emphasis to their evolving needs. Not surprisingly, 85% of all new launches fail to meet their predetermined business objectives. So the key concern for a lot of customers or clients that we work with is, how do I reduce my risk of failure? How do I increase my chances of success? And how do I crash the total innovation time? Now, this is where our 360 insights to NPD approach comes in. So it's a 5-step process where we start with understanding what the customer's goals are, what his objectives are, his challenges are, etc. We then look at what's happening in the market. So we subscribe to a series of syndicated sites. So this is information that's available to everyone, but it's important because it lays the foundation that we build upon. Okay. This is where our differentiation comes in. We call this stage 3, which is experiential intelligence. Okay. Now, we invest a lot in proprietary research to try and understand consumers' needs, their attitudes, and their behaviors. Some of this research could be future focused. Some of these could be focused on a trending topic, or some of these could be category specific. To give you a few examples, so we've done a piece of work on that we call the future of food and beverages. So this is to understand consumers' evolving needs from food and beverages from a 3 to 4 year perspective. So we did this piece of work about 1.5 years back, and earlier this year we did a refresh to try and understand that the scenarios that we had predicted, how those are playing out in the market, and made adjustments to those predicted scenarios. Okay. Now, post the pandemic, people are very concerned about their health and wellness. So we did a study on future of nutrition to try and understand the role of nutrition in consumers' life and the role that taste plays in the scheme of nutrition. Sustainability is again something that's very high on consumers' agenda. So we did a global study to understand what sustainability means to consumers across the world, and what it means to consumers across different categories, and what we need to do by category to address their concerns around sustainability. And we might do something which is category specific. So recently we had concluded a work in Southeast Asia to try and understand the beverages that consumers have throughout the day, what is the need state, and what is the ability of one type of beverage to stretch from one need state into another. Okay. Now, stage 1 to 3 tell us what consumers want. Stage 4 and 5 tell us how we can address their needs, and that's where our technology tools come in. So the first tool that I'm going to talk about is called Transporter. So it's a AI-powered tool that we've built using IBM's Watson technology. It's built on the premise that consumers are constantly seeking new experiences. And when they want new experiences, they go to the social media handles of influencers for inspiration. So if a brand wants to be ahead of the curve, you need to know what these social media influencers are talking about. So we identify these social media influencers, or micro-influencers as we call them, across different markets. We have about 500 to 750 micro-influencers that we track. The platform basically scrapes the social media platforms for food and beverage related information. Then, using a combination of machine learning and natural language processing, we predict flavors and ingredients that have the highest chance of breakout over a period of time. So each of these flavors and ingredients are given a trend score, which are then segmented into 4 buckets, which we call sweet spot, early interest, long tail, and matured. So sweet spots are flavors and ingredients that have potential to go mainstream in the next 9 to 12 months. Early interest, probably 12 months to about 18 months. long tail 18 months out. And if you're looking at something that's already popular in the market, you can look at flavors and ingredients in the matured segment, right? So using this segmentation, you can develop your innovation pipeline from now till about 2 to 3 years out. Okay. Now, there's this whole trend of localization and hyper-localization. So at times we get questions from consumers, so from our customers saying we're not interested in what's trending in a market, we want to know what's trending in a specific region on a market. So it's about, what's trending in North Indonesia versus, West Indonesia versus North Malaysia versus East Malaysia, for example. So we've built a platform that we call Cuisine Watcher. Now, what we do is we've identified the key food delivery integrators in each market. We scrape their platforms for, menu information, and then we analyze that information to look at what are the trending cuisines, dishes, beverages, etc. So in Indonesia, for example, we track 172,040 restaurants, okay, out of which we've identified 99 different cuisines, about 27,000 different dishes, and about 15,000 different beverage types. Okay. If we look at hierarchy, we can look at data by market. We can look at data by region, province, district, city. We can look at data by restaurants, tea and coffee shops. Within restaurants, it's further split by QSRs and non-QSRs. And within each, you can look at the cuisines and the foods and beverages within each of these cuisines. And then we can all look at what are the trending ingredients that make up each of these food and beverages. Okay. Then there's taste charts. So this is a KERRY view on flavors and ingredients driving taste across 5 different categories. And these categories are sweet, savory, salty snacks, dairy and hot beverages, and water and cold beverages. So this is built using new launch data, point of sale data, and menu scraping. And for each of these 5 categories, we segment the flavors and ingredients into 4 different buckets, which is mainstream, key, up and coming, and emerging. Mainstream and key are the 25 flavors that have been top of the list for the last 5 years. Up and coming is the fastest growing in the last 3 years, and emerging is the fastest growing in the last 1 year. Okay. Now, if we look at stage 1 to 3, they tell us what consumers want. We can define the innovation platforms based on that. Stage 4 tells us what are the trending ingredients and flavors that we can use under each of those innovation platforms. This information is then fed to our R&D, baristas, whoever is working on that project. They come up with a whole list of ideas. Then to remove any kind of subjectivity in terms of choosing the popular ideas, we test these ideas with consumers, and we have access to platforms like Qualtrics, Cube, which is an analytics software, and Danata, which is a panel provider. Okay. These ideas are tested, and then we shortlist the most popular ideas. Okay. And then platforms like the analytics software like you allow us to do additional analysis, like what is the additional market share you can probably look at achieving if you launch 2 versus 1 product, for example. Shortlisted ideas are then developed into prototypes, and that's where the sensory research comes in, because you can have a fantastic idea, but unless they taste good to the consumers, they're not going to work, right? Now, traditional consumer research comes with a lot of biases. That means inaccuracies. That means it reduces your chances of winning. So we built a new platform around neurosensory to counter that. Now, what this does is it basically analyzes consumers' liking of a stimulus based on neurological, physiological, and your biological response. So we triangulate data from 3 different sources: GSR, which is galvanic skin response, EEG, and facial coding. So GSR measures your sweat gland activity, which is a measure of emotional arousal. Now that arousal can be positive or it can be negative. That's measured through EEG. So EEG basically looks at the approach avoidance behavior based on the differences in activity in the frontal lobe of the brain. And we have a third measure, which is facial coding, that looks at 22 different facial landmarks and 36 expressions across these landmarks. These are then triangulated into what we call the circumplex model of emotion. And so according to this model, human emotions are understood in 2 dimensions. The vertical one is called arousal, and the horizontal line is called valence, which is liking. And based on your position in the matrix, we can determine your emotional state when you're exposed to that stimulus, right? So I'm going to just show you a quick video on neuroscience and why we use it. Okay. Audio. Audio. How do you go back? Okay, audio.
According to Nielsen, 85% of all new F&B products fail to meet their pre-launch business targets and goals. The main reason for this is lack of robust insights. Therefore, the key concerns for brands are: how do we reduce the risk of failure? How do we increase the chances of winning? And how do we crash the total innovation time? Creating a differentiated concept is great, but we need to ensure that the concept meets consumers' requirements in terms of taste. Traditional consumer sensory research comes with a lot of biases. That means inaccuracies, which reduce our chances of winning. To counter this, we have built a new platform based on neuroscience. This evaluates consumer liking of a stimulus based on their physiological, neurological, and biological response. It triangulates data from 3 sources: EEG, GSR, and facial coding. EEG measures the approach avoidance behavior based on the differences in the activity in the frontal lobe of the brain. GSR, galvanic skin response, measures the sweat gland activity, an indicator of emotional arousal. Facial coding looks at 22 facial landmarks and 36 expressions across these landmarks to evaluate emotional state when exposed to the stimulus. The data is then mapped into a matrix, the circumplex model of emotions. According to this model, human emotions are understood in 2 dimensions: arousal and valence. Based on the position in the matrix, we can identify emotional states when exposed to the stimulus. KERRY's neurosensory research, with its unbiased accuracy and real-time insights, is a game changer for brands looking to crush the innovation time and bring products to market with confidence.
So we've talked a bit about the theory. Now let's move from theory to action. So just, as an example, if we get a brief to develop a savory snack which is, potato chip based or corn based, how would we approach that? So we would start with trends, and when it comes to trends, it's the wider environment that kind of shapes humans, our consumers' attitude, values, and beliefs, which in turn drives lifestyle trends. So keeping that in mind, we would start off with, 2 of the studies that we mentioned, which is Future of Food and Future of Nutrition. So just a bit more on these 2 studies. So given that these are future focused, these were not done with consumers because consumers are not the best people to talk about what they want in future. These were done with food and beverage experts. So we spoke to about 60 plus food and beverage experts across the region, and these experts included dietitians, nutritionists, restaurant owners, startups of F&B companies, etc. We started off by looking at mega trends. From mega trends, we went to macro trends, then using two criteria, which is longevity and applicability to food and beverages. We did a short list of these macro trends. From macro trends, we went to micro trends, and then we synthesized those into 10 themes around future direction of food and beverages, innovation in food and beverages, and the residual impact of COVID on food and beverages, right? So out of these 10 themes, we've picked up two to kind of do a demonstration of how we would approach that. But before we get into those themes, we'll give a quick, a background of how consumers' relation with food and beverage is changing, and I'll let my colleague Tasha talk about that.
Okay. Okay, so if we look at how the landscape of food and beverage has changed over the last 3 years, we see that there is a real relationship change in terms of how consumers look at personal health and self-care. So in terms of the pandemic, there's a big focus on healthcare and self-care. We see consumers now more concerned than ever on what's in their products, looking at cleaner label, and also how they can increase their health and wellness benefits here. So this results in consumers being willing to change their lifestyles. They are much more focused on well-being, and in the self-care space, we see this become much more focused on emotional well-being and focused on things that bring them micro moments of happiness, that bring them indulgence, that have elements of emotional well-being in this sense. So a second thing we've also seen is the evolution of sustainability change over this time. So when we talk about sustainability in Southeast Asia, this can have different meanings in terms of what it might mean in one country to another. So if we look at sustainability in somewhere like India, this can be to do with food protection and more to do with food safety. So looking at how my food is consumed and is it safe for me, versus somewhere like Australia, where we see sustainability be better for planet, looking at more environmental concerns and looking at things like this. The third one that we look at is inflation. So inflation, we can see it everywhere. We see it in retail, we see it in food service. Inflation is something that we can't run away from, and this means that consumers are looking to maximize the benefit that they get from food and beverage, trying new ingredients, trying more exclusive ingredients, while also at an affordable price. So given this, there are two themes that we have chosen to focus on today. The first one being the hypermodern traditionalists, and this is looking a little bit at how traditional foods are coming back to the forefront, at how we are bringing back traditional foods with a modern twist, and also looking at redefining gourmet. So redefining gourmet is looking a lot more about how do we create a sophisticated experience for the consumer, taking inflation into consideration, how do we still give the consumer an exciting experience, and give them a taste of exclusive and specific ingredients. Okay, so if we look at hypermodern traditionalist, we look at multiple taste implications here, but one taste implication that we wanted to pull out, which comes up multiple times, is looking at fermentation front. So you can see that using our taste cart, there's a lot of fermented products on there. We have products like kimchi, gochujang, soy sauce and oyster sauce, and also Japanese miso. So fermentation is nothing new. We know fermentation is something that is quite traditional. We've used it many, many times over and over again in terms of preserving food. So it's been a method of food preservation. It's also been something that we use to give depth of flavor. So we have the profile of umami, sour, and spicy, and many depths of flavor that come together with this. And we can see this through the example of nampla, which we know as a Thai fish sauce and something that is fermented that gives many different flavors. And when we look as well at our transporter data, we can see that this fermentation funk and different fermented foods are also trending. So while looking at this in a hypermodern traditionalist context, we know that fermentation is something that is important. However, we also need to look at how we take it out of the out of home into newer categories and newer ways of consuming. So we fed these flavors into our chef, who, in this process of how we come up with new concepts, would provide some feedback on what would work. And you can see here that Chef Thomas suggested that if we're going to use something that is fermented, like kimchi, it pairs well with something that is like a mild cheese or something a little bit more mild in order to bring out the two flavor profiles. So from this, we were able to come up with a new concept in snack, which is called the grilled kimchi cheese, which you can see here uses the flavor profile of mozzarella cheese, and it's combining two globally inspired flavors and having that tangy zest of kimchi with a rich, smoky taste of grilled cheese, something that is a little bit more bold and complex, combining two flavor profiles to be able to give that fermented funk taste as well as that cheesy and creamy goodness. So now we look at the theme of redefining gourmet. So we talked about redefining gourmet as bringing a different kind of sophisticated experience to the consumer. And this is much more about replicating that restaurant experience at home and throughout the day. So we're looking here at creating something that's an ethnic experience and using ingredients that might not be everyday ingredients, something that's a little bit more exclusive to be able to create that experience at home and throughout micro moments in the day. Also looking back at the theme of what we were talking about with inflation, this is really kept in mind when we talk about redefining gourmet because of inflation and because of the cost of products and eating out, wanting something different for the consumer in an out-of-home experience as well. So we chose to focus for this platform on spicy adventure as an innovation pillar. And this is because as Asians, we are naturally interested in spicy food and have that flavor profile as part of our everyday experience, right? But in redefining gourmet, we see this as something where consumers are seeking more complex experiences from spice. So it's not just your everyday chili padi that you would add on top, but also looking at something to do with how do we use spice in a more complex way, how do we increase the flavor profile of spice, and how do we use it in other things as not just our traditional dip and add it on top. So we see consumers are using spice paste. We've used the example of sambal terasi here, where consumers are using spice pastes from not just marinating now to also barbecuing, cooking, and using it in different flavor profiles in different ways. So in the same context, we fed this into our chef, and we found that something that kept coming up in terms of a trendy ingredient was jalapenos, and looking back at the previous example about what we were talking about, hyper-modern traditionalist, also pickled jalapenos. So there's a fermentation element here as well. So something that we came up with using that context is a new concept called the tangy cheese jalapeno blast. And this is a Mexican-inspired concept, packing a punch with its combination of spicy and tangy to create a different experience of pickled jalapenos paired with the creaminess of cheese. Okay, so this is compared to the element of fried poppers. So we've all tried the fried jalapenos that pop in your mouth. This has put more emphasis on the tangy and punchy flavor experience here. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over back to Avi to talk to you a little bit more about our process.
So we develop not just these two ideas when we work on the project, we develop many more such ideas. We test these ideas with consumers. The most preferred ideas are developed into prototypes, which are then tested with consumers using neuroscience. Okay, so we'll do a quick demo of that. We're just having some internet issues, so just give me a minute. There seems to be some issue with the internet connection, so it's not strong enough to connect to the cloud because the platform is on cloud. Uh, Maybe I can just, show you what the equipment looks like. So this is the EEG equipment. It's a 8-channel equipment that we use. On his fingers, what he has is the GSR, which measures the galvanic skin response, and then you have the facial coding. You've seen the video of what it looks like. I'll show you what the so this is what the output would probably look like. So once we do the testing, the data is immediately uploaded onto cloud. So it's a platform that's on cloud, right? And you can see the results in real time. So this is your midpoint, the 0, which is arousal, and the horizontal is the valence. We did a pre-test with 4 products, and this is where they feature. Now these were all market products, so obviously they would be in the positive quadrant, which is the top right, which is high arousal and high valence. But even in that quadrant, when we create a new product to test against these market samples, there might be a bit of a variance in terms of taste. And then the request from the customer or client could be a matching product or could be a superior product. So some product could be higher in terms of arousal, some product could be higher in terms of valence. So in that case, how do you determine which product is better? So for example, this one in yellow is higher in terms of liking, but this one is higher in terms of valence. So we have this additional measure which we call the happiness index. It's based on harmonic mean. So that gives a kind of weightage to the arousal and valence. And based on the harmonic mean, you have one single figure that helps you determine which product is preferred more by consumers, right? So if you have 4 products, so the market product 1 is the highest in terms of harmonic mean, followed by a barbecue 2, which we had developed, followed by 3 and 4, right? So when used in conjunction, our tools kind of deliver business results. And again, I'm just going to end with one example from a real life case that we had in Vietnam. So this is a brief that we had from a beverage customer in Vietnam for their summer LTO. So we did the due diligence in terms of trying to understand the insights, etc. From the insights, we developed the innovation pillars. Then on Trendspotter, we track about 650 micro-influencers in Vietnam. So we looked at trending flavors and ingredients under those innovation pillars, and then passed them on to a barista who selected 2 among many. And these 2 were watermelon juice and fresh lychee. And they used that to create the watermelon lychee tea. Now this was one of the most successful LTOs that we've launched in the market in the last 3 years. The average daily quantity per store per day was 3 times the norm. So business results with a very reduced innovation time. So we went from brief to the final concept in 4 days flat, right? And lastly, it helped us build a stronger relationship with our customers. So now, post this, not only did we win the next LTO, which was 3 times bigger than this, but we are helping our customer, not just with their new product development, but also in terms of helping them design the new flagship store in that market, right? So that's what we have for you. Any questions, we'll be happy to answer. And I'm sorry about the fact that because of internet connectivity, this thing didn't work. So there are some disadvantages of having a platform on cloud, I guess. So.
Thank you. This is a very wonderful presentation about the neurosensory. Okay, how we evaluate that? I'm sorry. My name is Norfitri Ekantari from Yogyakarta. How we can evaluate the response of the customer? They like or they dislike when we use the neurosensory. Okay, thank you.
The reason why we build this is when you do traditional research, it has a lot of biases, right? So if you do a quant research, which is the standard that sensory teams do, they give consumers a 7-pointer or 9-point monadic scale and ask you to rate on certain attributes like creaminess, milkiness, and all those. So a normal consumer doesn't understand, for example, the difference between creaminess, milkiness, so they'll randomly put something. If you're doing a focus group, one, very vocal person can take the discussion in any direction. Now this is totally non-verbal, right? So, so you don't have to say any, yeah. So you don't have to say anything. When you consume something, obviously, your face reflects that. So that's why we look at 22 facial, landmarks. Now, if I ask you to identify 22 facial landmarks, you probably won't be able to do that. So that's why this platform looks at things like this part of the brow, this part of the brow, this one, this one, this one, this, all these. So 22 things, right? And those are things that you can't, unless you're highly trained, you can't kind of disguise those things. Secondly, your sweat gland activity, which is a measure of emotional arousal. Again, you can't control that because it's a physiological kind of a response. And then your brain, whether it likes it or not, is a neurological response. So again, you can't control that. So I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, because even in medical science, when you do, diagnosis for certain illnesses and all that, there's a margin of error. But that margin of error is much smaller than what you would do, have in the conventional research, for example. So that's why we have a totally non-verbal thing, which is very difficult for you to kind of manipulate, I guess. So.
Is it related about the response in our face with the neural connection sensory in our brain? Okay, thank you.
Your facial expression will reflect. So even if you try and keep a stoic face, not try and have any expression, you might keep your eyes straight, but there'll be some twitching somewhere in your face. So that's the 36 expressions that we kind of track. So.
With your sourcing of data from influencers online, are you concerned with the AI nature of the data that we're starting to see?
Sorry.
Are you concerned that artificially created content is affecting your results? Because created content, where have you heard of the dead internet theory, where I think most interactions on the internet are really are bots talking to bots, and their interactions are not real. Do you account for that in your data?
So are you referring to Transporter?
So
are you referring to this platform, or are you
referring to the social media scraping?
Yeah. So we've developed a methodology for identifying these micro influencers, and this criteria. We have a criteria. So the criteria includes the number of followers that they have, the percentage of posts that they have on food and beverages, recency of post, the follower-following ratio, among other things. And then once we identify these influencers, we manually validate their social media accounts. And these accounts are refreshed every year to kind of account for, bots, etc., etc. And again, we don't look at influencers, we look at micro-influencers, because influencers are obviously paid influencers. So that's why we don't track them.
Yeah.
So anyone who has more than about 50,000, we kind of filter them out.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. My name is Prativi from Ajinomoto Indonesia. I would like to ask about the respondent, for your method. Do you have any specific criteria for your respondent, and how many respondent as the minimum requirement to get the maybe to strengthen your data analysis? Thank you.
So this is with reference to neurosensory?
Yes.
Okay, so neurosensory depends on the brand and the category. So we let our customers define who their target audiences are. So we recruit accordingly. And then we can do as many. So I mean, recently we did something for one of our beverage customers. So we did it with about 150. Because your margin of error is low, you can have a lower number of consumers versus if you do a central location test. But we ensure that we have at least about 75 minimum, but it can go up to as many as we kind of align with our customers.
Okay, thank you.
We still have 30 minutes.
I saw the score that you have a very high score based on the body language. Any correlation you have done to extrapolate to purchase intent? Because your body language and purchase intent is actually two different things.
Right now we haven't, because purchase intent and actual purchase, purchase intent can depend on a lot of marketing factors, which could be your packaging, pricing, shelf space, etc. So we haven't done a correlation like that. So we just focus solely on whether they like it from a taste perspective or not.
When you do the testing and you do it like sequential monadic, do you also have some information about the familiarity of the product? In example, that the first response it might be the most honest, but if they like testing it in the second time, they might be familiar with it. How do you process that one?
So when we do neurosensory, it's very different from a monadic testing. So what we do is we record the responses for about 45 seconds to 1 minute. And in that 45 seconds to 1 minute, your initial response and your later response might be different. So that's why we record it for about 45 seconds to a minute, so we can take an average of that. And by the end of 1 minute, your taste buds go back to slightly normal. So when you test the next product, it's not influenced by your previous taste. So that's how we kind of determine that.
Okay, so my question is, I want to ask about how about people with sensory processing difficulty or disorder? How can this neuroscience technology tackle this kind of problem? And also, can you explain the plus points that this technology has compared to the traditional sensory evaluation for this kind of problem? Thank you.
Okay. When you say sensory disability, could you elaborate a bit on that?
Sorry, what?
When you say sensory disability.
No. Sensory processing disorder. So
Yeah.
there are some people with difficulty to process the sensory, like, I don't know, this kind of taste, or like, I don't know, this kind of stimuli.
See, yeah, okay. So when we do the testing of a product, we get consumers, we get consumers who don't have these issues because it's a test, right? So we want people who come in without, any kind of biases, right? Because it's totally, I guess, non-verbal kind of a thing. Now, how is this better versus traditional is, like I said, traditional, when you do a quant, a lot of people might not understand the difference between the different attributes that you have. Then again, if you're not a trained panel, rating something on a scale of 1 to 9 or 1 to 7 might be difficult. It might be easier for you to say, like very much, neutral, don't like, or don't like very much kind of a thing. But on a 9-point, 7-point scale, it might be difficult for you to do that. Again, qualitatively, focus groups can be slightly misleading because 1 or 2 people can just lead that discussion in any direction. So here, all those biases are taken care of because it's based on your physiological, neurological, and your biological response, which is very difficult for you to manipulate unless you're highly trained, like by some military agency, for example, right? And we try and avoid people who are from, Mossad or SAS and all those places. So these are normal consumers. For them, it's very difficult. I've had some people coming in and saying, if I put a nail under my foot, my response will be different. So like, fine, put a nail under your foot if you want to go through that kind of a pain to give us a different kind of a response. But that's, those are exceptions, right? But for normal people, it's very difficult to mask your bodily responses to something. So that's why.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
How many samples to evaluate in the one one serving? Thank you.
We can test as many samples as you want. Usually we try not to get one respondent to do more than six. But if we have 12, for example, we can increase the number of respondents. So we can rotate the samples. And the platform automatically does a rotation. So one individual will not do more than 6, but then we can double the number of respondents to manage the increased number of samples.
Okay, so I'm Kaisa from Otsuka. Regarding the happiness index that we measure using this neurosensory, could we really know what kind of attributes that really makes the panelists happy?
What kind of attributes make the panelists happy?
Yes, is it overall, or we can really break down whether it's the taste or it's the texture or other thing?
See, this platform doesn't give you a breakdown of what makes them happy, it just tells you whether they're happy or not. So in case, the advantage of this platform is that your result is in real time, so you can see immediately whether they like it or they don't like it. But it doesn't break down into what attributes they like or what elements they like. So if there is a negative response to a stimulus, then we have to go back to traditional research to try and understand what are the aspects that they didn't like. So there are some things that we can't do through neurosensory, because the brain is not going to tell me, they like the texture or this specific attribute. So those are things that we can't do through that platform. So
But using this, we could know whether the happiness or the sadness index.
So happiness index is the name that we've given to that mean, because your arousal and valence can be different. So we've given that average that we calculate using the principles of harmonic mean, the name of happiness index, because it just shows how happy it makes you. So the happiness index is, it's indexed on a scale of 0 to 1. So 1 means it makes you very happy, 0 means it makes you less happy. So that's why you call it.
Oh, okay, thank you, thank you.
The internet seems to be working, it's connected now. Can we just connect quickly and maybe we can, just put it on your head. So once we put this thing on his head, this is an 8 channel, so there are 2 options that we can use. We have an 8 channel and we have a 21 channel. So this 8 channel just covers the frontal lobe, and the green shows that the signal is going to be fine. Okay. then we can just do select anything and we can just record. So yeah, this is okay. Yeah. So this is recording of your GSR, your skin response, because we are using 8 channel. It's there, and again he's not consuming anything, so the lines might be just straight. And this is facial coding that shows his expressions as being recorded. So I mean, this is just set for I think 35 seconds. So once in 35 seconds it's over, let me just show you what happens next. Okay. So once this recording is done, it starts uploading onto cloud. Again, courtesy internet connection, it's not that fast. And once it gets uploaded onto cloud, you can immediately access the platform, and then you can see what the output looks like. So. I think we can give up on the internet connection. Any more questions? The internet is very slow because it needs a higher data, I guess, bandwidth. So. Right. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.